Let's get quickly to our friend Marshall Chriswell. This radio program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. And Marshall Chriswell certainly is that. And he joins us for this segment we call Marshall Law. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us here today. Hey, IUP starts classes today. Moms and dads are sending their kids off for the very first time to schools such as IUP and universities, maybe even much farther reaching away than that. And it's a scary time for parents to get rid of their kids, as they might say, but to send them off for their education and their first time being by themselves, living on their own. What are some of the things that we need to think about if we're parents and our kids are headed off to college?
I think something to consider is, we as our children get older and become college age, graduate from high school, turn 18, which under the law is kind of a magical age where they have become adults, and we probably don't see them that way. They are young adults, but in many ways they're still children and dependent on their parents. And so, but when they hit 18, all of a sudden they are legally a kind of a different person. They are able to enter into contracts. They're able to open up their own banking or other financial accounts. They can sign a lease for an apartment. They also gain protections under the law for confidentiality of their medical information. All these things that you had access and you had control over up until the day your child turned 18, all of a sudden you don't legally have control over those things anymore. And so the thing to consider is if my child's going away to college and they're an adult now, what happens if my child gets sick, gets injured, is in the hospital, or is overseas maybe doing a semester abroad? Who knows? They're unavailable, and something happens that you need to sign things on their behalf. You need to make medical decisions. The power of attorney is what you need to do that, and usually we don't think about power of attorney documents until later in life, right? You start to think about, what if I become incapacitated as a result of old age or some sort of illness? I need to have a power of attorney in place for someone to make decisions for me and sign things for me. But as a college student, they're in a transition period here. Lots of new things are happening for them, and there could be many situations that could arise where a parent may need to sign something on their behalf to take care of these things.
In relation to what we think of when we think of power of attorney for an elderly relative, are many of those issues the same issues, just turned around a bit?
It's the same. It is very similar. The documents themselves, and what I'd be recommending in this situation is a financial power of attorney, giving the parent the ability, in the event of the child's incapacity or unavailability, to sign checks from the child's bank account, if you need to do that, manage those bank accounts, and sign things even like a tax return or a vehicle registration, or something to do if an apartment lease needs to be signed or needs to be broken because the child is incapacitated for some reason. Something has happened that the child's unable to do these things. Maybe a lease needs to be broken. Things need to be signed there, and so those things, and then the other thing is the medical power of attorney, right? You've got the financial, and then you've got the medical power of attorney, which would allow the parent to make decisions and view the child's health care information, which the HIPAA law would otherwise prohibit. And yeah, those are really the same issues that someone with an elderly parent or elderly person they're taking care of is faced with just for a younger person.
Boy, it's a big one. That last one that you threw in there, that's really thing. I'm thinking about identity theft and the various issues that are involved there. That has become such a big issue this summer, and kids can find themselves maybe getting themselves involved in something that their moms and dad, if they were there in the house with them, they'd say, "No, you're not doing that. You don't know what's going on here," and I do. In this day and age, that really becomes important, doesn't it?
That's a really good point, Todd. You have these kids who are leaving the home. They're very vulnerable in lots of ways. They may be adults, but they certainly haven't had the life experience to avoid some of those traps and pitfalls that you might fall into. And in the event of identity theft, if you've ever had to deal with that, even something where someone gets your credit card number and starts charging things unbeknownst to you, and you get the call and they say, "Oh, we've noticed these unusual charges on your account," and you realize that it's fraud. Think about the amount of time that it takes to resolve something like that. How many phone calls you have to make, or forms you need to fill out, get credit reports, and all those things. And here you've got a kid who is maybe in the freshman year of college and trying to juggle all of these different responsibilities that they have. Maybe the parent would want to step in and say, "Well, let me make some of these calls and help you out a little bit to try to get this issue resolved." Well, nobody's going to talk to them unless they have some authorization to be managing these accounts and getting information and things like that. So the financial power of attorney would really come in handy there.
We're talking with Marshall Chriswell. The segment is called Martial Law, and one of the items that you mentioned a couple of moments ago as well, it concerns their child's medical information and the availability of it to parents. You mentioned when a child turns 18, he is considered or she is considered an adult, and I would guess that there are protections for their medical information that mom and dad want to have access to, and the child would want that too, but maybe isn't even thinking of it.
Yeah, and so the medical privacy laws, HIPAA in particular, is going to protect private medical information, and if your child is an adult and something happens at school, they get hurt, they get sick, you call down and you say, "Hey, I need to know what's going on here." Unless your child is physically able and willing to authorize it, then you're not going to be able to get that information. But if you have a power of attorney, you stick that in the fax machine or the scanner and email it over or fax it over, and the doctors and nurses are going to talk to you and give you the information that you need. So certainly there's some peace of mind with having that document in place.
Well, that peace of mind that you have might also be affected by the fact that your child has the ability or is vulnerable to the influence and the sway of others that don't have their best interests in mind. And parents need to find a way to maybe from a distance disentangle their children from some legal predicaments. They can be whether their child has been involved in some sort of illegal activity or has just been victimized by someone. Is that not true?
Certainly, or if they do find themselves in legal trouble, whether it's in the criminal system or the civil system, landlord-tenant disputes are pretty common among college students, and so if you have a power of attorney document, you're going to be able to present that and do some things on their behalf to try to resolve these issues.
Are parents going to find themselves vulnerable if they don't have their own legal protections in place? Should their child incur some sort of massive expense and it come back on mom and dad?
So as far as parents and your kids going out on their own and entering into these relationships, whether it be landlord-tenant or a credit card or a new bank account or loans and things like that. Many times parents, and this is kind of a different subject, but you've got to realize that often you're being asked for signatures, and you have to realize you've really got to read or have someone review and explain to you what your legal responsibilities are, because often you're co-signing for things that maybe you don't even realize that I've signed co-signed on my son's lease, but the landlord actually, if my son doesn't pay the rent, or actually any one of his roommates doesn't pay the rent, landlord can come back to me for all of it. You've got to realize those things.
Yeah. All right. So for moms and dads who want to have power of attorney for their children as they go off to college, what are the steps they need to follow?
You'd want to meet with an attorney. You want to get the proper documents in place, and we also want to think about where your child is going to school and whether it's appropriate to have something put in place state specific for if they're going to be outside of Pennsylvania. But we really want to think about what things are that need to be in that document, and the child is going to have to be there to sign as well. So we're in a time right now when kids are getting ready to go off to school. So maybe before they leave, or that first visit back home after classes start would be a good time to meet with a lawyer and talk about that.
Yeah, those kids are on their way out the door even as we speak, probably.
That's right.
So, Marshall, what do folks need to do if they want to contact you about this?
You can call me at 724-465-5826. Stop and see me in the R&P Cole Building, 655 Church Street, Suite 306 in Indiana, or just go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
He's Marshall Chriswell. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Have a good week.
You too.
Have a good week.
You too.